In a ruthless bid for power, a man dared to enter the lair of monstrous sirens, hoping to borrow the might of an ancient god to overthrow his brother. The creatures were more than willing to help, but at a chilling cost. He had to offer up the woman he loved as a sacrifice. Faced with their grotesque forms and the horrifying demand, Vortigern couldn't bring himself to go through with it. He turned down the deal. But the ancient god didn't get angry. It simply waited, because it knew this man would return when the time was right, willing to give up everything. Sure enough, Vortigern never gave up on his dark ambitions. In secret, he allied himself with a coven of shadow mages and plotted to topple King Uther's rule and seize power for himself. Mordred, his ally and a ruthless sorcerer, murdered the king of wizards and used his stolen staff to perform a forbidden ritual atop the sacred tower. With it, he summoned a colossal beast of war, an ancient mammoth of destruction. The centuries-long peace between humans and mages shattered in an instant. Camelot fell into its darkest hour. Human soldiers, tiny against the prehistoric titan, stood no chance. The creatures stormed through city walls like they were made of paper. And that was just the beginning. Riding atop the beast, Mordred unleashed waves of dark energy from his back, wiping out entire squadrons before they could even react. Faced with such overwhelming force, despair swept across the defenders' faces. Still, they retreated slowly, refusing to abandon the last remnants of their homeland. But up on the altar, Mordred showed no mercy. Channeling necromantic power, he controlled the mammoth like a puppet, commanding it to breach the city's final wall with terrifying ease. Vortigern believed victory was his. He urged his brother, Uther, to surrender. But to his surprise, Uther remained calm. The king removed his crown and entrusted it to Vortigern for safekeeping. Then, without a word, he called for the sacred sword and mounted his horse. Alone, he rode into the heart of the enemy army. Though he was dwarfed by the monstrous creature, there wasn't a trace of fear in his eyes. With fearless determination, Uther leapt across a broken bridge and climbed toward the dark altar where Mordred stood. Meanwhile, the mammoth's army of savages had broken through the city's final line of defense. Tens of thousands surged forward, weapons drawn, bloodlust in their eyes. As chaos descended, the defenders resolved to die with honor, fighting to protect their homes until the end. At the critical moment, Uther reached Mordred. The dark sorcerer was stunned by the king's courage and immediately began chanting an incantation, hoping to incinerate him on the spot. But Uther emerged unscathed. Calmly, he drew the king's sword. The moment his hands gripped the hilt, a surge of blue magic coursed through his body, so powerful it seemed to freeze time itself. The truth was finally revealed. Merlin, the grand sorcerer, had foreseen Mordred's treachery. While Mordred was away at war, Merlin had secretly stolen the staff of the fallen wizard king and reforged it into the legendary Sword of Kings. He entrusted it to the Lady of the Fox, with a spell that only Uther and his bloodline could awaken its power. It was a weapon meant not for conquest, but to maintain peace between humans and mages. As Uther approached, step by step, Mordred realized in horror that his years of mastering dark magic were nothing against the sacred sword. Helpless, he could only watch as Uther swung the blade and severed his head. With its master gone, the ancient mammoth regained its senses. In a violent rampage, it turned on the barbarian horde riding its back and wiped them out in an instant. Holding the crown his brother had handed him, Vortigern knew the tide had turned. If he didn't act fast, the king would soon discover his plot to betray the throne. With no other option, he took a final risk. That very night, he ordered his men to assassinate the king. Then, dragging along his unsuspecting wife, he returned to the siren's lair and rang the bell of doom. As she looked at him in confusion,